Hannah Davies. I'm doing my evaluation reflection number 1 for athletic training class 365. The lab instructor is Jess Edler. So today I'm going to talk about lower extremity evaluations and one specifically, and then how I can improve from that, good things, bad things, just reflect on the process, my decision-making skills, and such. I'm working with mostly track and field athletes right now at a high school, doing a lot of shin splints and hamstring strains. So today I'm going to talk about a hamstring strain I've diagnosed and treated in the clinic over the last couple weeks. I talked with my preceptor, Dave, about not just one specific evaluation, but multiple evaluations, because I have 1 or 2 a day with the athletes that I'm working with right now. From his comment and from what I've heard from the other clinicians at the clinical site, a relatively good decision-making skills and learning when to move on from my history questions, doing which special tests or manual muscle tests, pinpointing which ones, but not having tunnel vision, so not only thinking about one pathology, thinking broad spectrum, and then working my way through, but not choosing my goal before I begin, if that makes sense. For hamstring strains, there aren't a lot of special tests per se. There's no, of course, you're going to rule out any types of fractures or anything like that, which isn't really what you think with like a mechanism of a hamstring strain. But of course, you're going to rule it out. Do a lot of manual muscle testing, and palpation, I think, is key, determining whether or not it's in the muscle belly or closer to a tendon, joint site, and then of course the mechanism. So running straight forward, sprinters, jumpers, whether or not it's like an alternate sport. I had a baseball player with a strain, so what was their mechanism, identifying that, and kind of figuring out what it could be based on the mechanism. So narrowing that down. I think my history questions kind of relatively the same for each pathology, especially if it's especially if it's like muscular or bone, so ortho related, not like gen med or anything like that. Always cover the mechanism of injury, when it happened, pain scale, numbness and tingling. Sometimes I get stuck on, like, I feel like sometimes I ask the question so quickly, or I don't really listen to their answer. I just go to my next question, trying to work on that and trying to make it more of a conversation than like a test or like a form that they would fill out if they went to a doctor's office. More specific history questions, like previous history, kinetic chain history, their specific event. So even if it didn't happen in an event-related activity, say they did it at home or something like that, what restrictions they would have in their event, and then activities of daily living that would be affected, such as like if it was an arm, if they couldn't wash their hair, couldn't reach their hair, so like walking upstairs, things like that. Other activities of daily living that apply directly to the injury. I think some of my strengths are patient communication. I take a lot of time to make sure that my patient knows what I'm doing. I ask if they have questions most of the time so they know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Patient goals, I think, is a really good one, not only getting them back into play or running or whatnot, but getting them back into their everyday tasks, being able to do things with pain-free, or if they have limited range of motion, being able to gain back that range of motion. Spend a lot of time at the end when I've come to my clinical, not diagnoses, but my my clinical impression. And before I even come to the conclusion or say it out loud, I take time to ask if they have any concerns, like if they, one I get all the time is, well, if I'm injured, can I still work out? So thinking about what they can do, limits, and if they need any restrictions, types of treatments they're going to need, a treatment plan, before I even come down to what it is. That way they have a plan before they get, oh, it's this or that. Because if it's a more serious something, you can kind of ease them into it. So if, for example, if you thought it was a fracture, saying that you're going to limit this and they're not going to be able to play, or they're going to have to sit out, we're going to do this rehab, those things, and then kind of say my impression is this, I think it helps the patient understand how I got there, because they're like, hey, my hand hurts, or hey, my hamstrings hurt. I think a lot of them are looking for quick fixes, which will never happen. I can't just snap my fingers and hope that it's healed. It's not how this works, and that's why we're here. So I think things I'll probably need to improve on is just flow, making sure I'm patient-centered. That's going to be important for everything. So patient-centered care, there's always room to improve there. Being confident in not only in what I'm doing, but how I talk to the patient. Dave and I have talked about that before, is confidence. Don't hesitate, just do it. And if you don't know, make it up on the go, and they will never notice. And I think that's something that I really struggle with, because I want to be right, and I want to have the answers right on the dot and whatnot. So I think for future clinical, my future in clinical sites and whatnot, I'm going to try to take the time. And I think there's this idea that evaluations have to be done in 0.2 minutes or seconds, or you have to finish in this amount of time, but honestly, you just need to get to the clinical impression, but you have to cover all your bases. You can't skip range of motion because you've got only 5 minutes. You can't skip manual muscle tests because you don't think it's muscular. You have to rule all of those things out before you can reach your destination, and I think that is something that I will need to work on. The tunnel vision effect, it's definitely still in my head, and I say, hey, my hamstrings hurt, I automatically go to hamstring strain, but I don't think, what else could it be? I don't have a lot of differential diagnoses. I think it's hard with a hamstring strain because it's pretty muscular specific. I was running and then I couldn't, or something like that. For my specific athlete that I'm working with right now, mid-distance, so it's like not really a sprinter, not really long distance, and learning how to work with him and because he doesn't fatigue as quickly, but he also fatigues, if that makes sense. So strengthening and learning how to do rehab for these people, it's all within the thing, but before I can get there, I have to take the time to do accurate history, accurate evaluation, and make sure I'm patient-centered. So I think those will be my goals, is patient-centered care and my confidence for the future. Thank you.